Hello, today we're going to talk to you about quarter round. After the installation of a hardwood floor or laminate flooring and we've gone ahead and installed the base, some people like to make that transition from the wall to the floor a little bit smoother. So how do they do that? They add a quarter round. So here we have a sample of the quarter round. This is a quarter round that is typically about 3/4 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch and half mooned on the other side. What that does is once the base board is applied and installed on the floor, if you've got any irregularities within the floor and you've got some gapping at the bottom, a good way to take care of that is to go ahead and put a quarter round. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to show you how to cut the corners, get your miters, and install the material. Okay, so just like installing the baseboard, you have to make sure you know what angles you're dealing with. That's why I always like to carry a square with me. Make sure that we know if we're dealing with a true corner or something that's not quite a true corner. So as you can see here, once I put the square on here, we've got a little bit of a gap here that's not a perfectly true 45. So we're going to need to adjust that on the saw when we actually make our cut. So when it comes to cutting an outside corner and working around the room, it's always nice to start with the outside corner and work your way back. On an outside corner, you want to work your way back to an inside corner or along a straight wall, because this is the corner that's going to be the most noticeable. So aesthetically looking, you want the tightest fit, you want the best look on your outside corner. Now when we go ahead and cut this material, again, we want to make sure that we tape the material and that when you actually put the saw through it, you do it softly and not too quick, because that's when you're going to get your splintering. Taping the material will actually save from splintering and protect the finish. Okay, so I've gone ahead and made my cuts, and now I'm aligning it on the outside corner. As you can see here, we've run it long down on the one end, and it's going to cover any gaps that we have, and you can see we've got a nice tight finish here. That's what you want. You don't want gapping on the top, you don't want gapping on the bottom. You want to make sure when the material is sitting natural that you've got a good tight edge. Now we're going to show you how to actually adhere it or install it to the wall. There's two ways you can do it. You can either do it with an air nailer and a brad nailer, or you can do the drill and finish nail technique. If you're pre-drilling with a finish nail, you want to make sure that you use a tape on there, because it's going, just so you protect the finish when you're actually hammering the material in. Whether you're using a brad nailer or a hammer, you want to make sure that your nails are countersunk so that later on you can come in with your finishing putty and you've got a little bit of depth for that putty to adhere to. When it comes to protecting the finish with a brad nailer, a lot of the brad nailers will come with a protective end on it, with a soft rubber protective end, so you don't damage the finish. What we want to do is we want to put it at a downward angle and try not to nail into the floor, because remember, the floor has to move underneath for expansion and contraction, so you really don't want to fasten it to the floor. Okay, we've actually got the quarter round adhered to the wall now. We've got a nice tight outside corner, which aesthetically is what we want to see, the most noticeable part of the installation. So it's nice and tight, we've got it tight to the wall, and we're good to go. Okay, so now we're going to deal with an inside corner when it comes to the quarter round. The quarter round can be treated the same way. It can be cut with same as an outside corner when it comes to a miter cut, or it could be cut the second way, which is coping. Okay, so you've got two options, unlike the outside corner where you've pretty much got one option. So when it comes to the inside corner, again, I've got my square and I kind of want to see what I'm dealing with. You know, are we dealing with a perfectly 90-degree angle, or are we dealing with something that's not? Okay, so I'm not at a true 90-degree, which means that when I put it on the saw, I'm not going to be at a true 45. So you can mess around and you can adjust your saw till you get the perfect miter, but the one fail-safe way to do this is coping. Now, how do you cope a corner or an inside corner? It's very easy. The only additional tool you really need is a coping saw. So how do we do this? What we're going to do with coping is we run the material directly into the opposite wall. So this first piece we don't even really need to cut, other than, you know, a square cut. Now the second piece, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and cut a 45, and then we cope out that material. Now what we need to do is we need to take our coping saw and we cut into the material following this outside edge, and we want to get that cut and remove all the backside of this wood and get a nice fine line to follow that cut edge. And with doing that, you're going to do it with your coping saw, keeping it at an angle, because you want it beveled back slightly. Now I've got one here that's finished, and this is what the finished product's going to look like. Okay, Now you can see it's following that cut angle, and I actually had to take my knife because the coping saw will get as close as you can, but sometimes you need to take your knife and fine tune it. You want everything to follow that cut edge perfectly, and you want to remove the back side of the material as much as you can. Now that I've got this done, I can run that directly into the wall and overlap the second piece over it, and you can see I've got a nice tight fit. Now if your corner like I said, isn't perfectly aligned, this really doesn't have to matter that much as if you were bevel cutting it. All right, once we've got our inside corner cut and ready to go, then we can go ahead and fasten it to the wall just like we did on the outside corner. Again, making sure that nails and brad nails are countersunk so you got some place to put the putty and finish it off. Thank you, and good luck with your next project.